They tried to shut down the Department of Education without even checking if it was legal. In a stunning congressional hearing, Rep. Steny Hoyer pressed Secretary Linda McMahon on whether she had authority to dismantle the DOE. Her answer: confusion, spin, and an admission that $4.3 billion in education funding had been slashed to just $2 billion. 18 programs gutted, states left holding the bag, and Congress sidelined. If a president can erase an entire department like this...
And again, as I promised, I came back. The president instructed you to take all necessary steps to facilitate the closure of the Department of Education. Did you check with your counsel or legal advisors as to whether or not you had authority to accomplish that request?
The president's executive order and his direction to me was to take those steps to lawfully shut down the Department of Education and to work with Congress to do that.
I understand what you said, but his quote was, take all necessary steps to facilitate the closure of the Department of Education. It was not, as you suggest, from the reading of his quote and his executive order, inclusive of consistent with the law. But that's your interpretation of what he said?
I would like to look at it again and get back to you, but I do believe he said to lawfully close down the Department of Education. At least let me rephrase and say that is clearly his direction to me. We both know and understand that the Department of Education cannot be closed unless Congress votes to do that. So my goal, when I came on board, and he asked me how I thought we could do that, and I said my goal would be to work with Congress so that we could have transparent programs. I would like to, at the end of this program that I'm working on, as we try to bring up our test scores and work with our local states to bring education back to the states, to make sure that states have best practices and the tools to deliver those best practices. And so by sharing them with Congress, I would hope that Congress would look at them and say, you know, eventually, I believe that this is going to be in the best interest of our students. This is not taking away funding. This is having funding go to the states for, you know, for Title 1A, for IDEA. That is continuing. It may flow through in a different tranche.
Okay, as you know, we have time constraints.
Okay.
I hear you. Having said that, does the budget that is submitted to the Congress of the United States for fiscal year 26 include full funding for those programs that the Congress has authorized and directed and be established and carried out?
Well, as you know, Congressman, we are dealing with the skinny budget at this point. Not all of the programs have been put into the full budget of the president, but I can tell you that the Title 1A funding and IDA funding is fully funded under the
Let me ask you
budget.
about
Yes.
that. I have a table that shows me about $4.3 billion were established for those programs and are going to be, those 18 programs to which I think you refer, are going to be put down into a single grant of $2 billion. Can you tell me, now that's a $2.3 billion, that's about a 55–60% reduction. What will not be done, excuse me, is accurate that we've taken 4.3 down to 2.8 or 2 billion? Is that accurate?
Well, let's be clear about one thing, though. The Title 1A funding and IDA funding is in full.
Correct.
So they're not part of the 18 that is being compressed. So the 18 programs that you mentioned
Yes.
are really, they will be compressed into $2 billion, which will operate like a block grant to the states, where I think they can best be utilized by understanding what is needed in the states and the communities.
So when you say we're not, I understand Title I, but almost always when we talk about block granting programs, we make very, very substantial substantive cuts in the availability of resources for the programs that are covered. That is my reading of 18 programs going into, which we are now spending $4.3 billion on, down to $2 billion. It seems to me that is eliminating very substantially, without authority from the Congress, programs that the Congress has enabled and directed be undertaken for the American people.
Well, let's look at it this way, if we could. We are eliminating regulations and red tape that a lot of these different grants had with them, and therefore they're going to require less compliance with regulations in order to fulfill the mission of those grants.
Madam Secretary.
If I could just finish this one thing.
Sure.
One stat that I think was impressive to me was that 47 cents of every dollar that goes in for these kinds of programs is spent on regulatory compliance. We want to get rid of that. Let the money flow to the states, and I think we're going to see more money available in the states with less red tape.
My time has expired, but I came here in '81. President Reagan talked about getting rid of fraud, waste, and abuse. The deficit was increased by 189% under President Reagan. Fraud, waste, and abuse, nobody on this panel, on this side or that side, wants to have fraud, waste, and abuse. We all agree on that. That is not what you're cutting out when you take 55% or 60% reduction in 18 programs. I guarantee you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
What stops them from targeting the next one? It started with a simple question. Did Secretary Linda McMahon even ask her lawyers if she had the authority to shut down the Department of Education? The answer was anything but simple. McMahon said the president instructed her to lawfully close the department, but when Rep. Steny Hoyer read the directive aloud, that word wasn't there. It said only take all necessary steps to facilitate the closure of the Department of Education. No mention of legality, no mention of Congress. That's a problem because the DOE exists by an act of Congress, and only Congress can dismantle it. Ignoring that process isn't just sloppy, it's unconstitutional. McMahon's shaky response and attempts to reinterpret the president's order signaled either alarming overreach or reckless disregard for the law, raising the stakes far beyond one agency's future. When the questioning shifted to the budget, the situation became even more alarming. 18 federally authorized education programs, funding everything from teacher support to after-school initiatives, were collapsed into a single $2 billion block grant. Previously, those programs received $4.3 billion, meaning over half the funding vanished without congressional approval. Secretary McMahon framed the move as an efficiency upgrade, claiming 47 cents of every dollar went to compliance rather than kids. But block grants and deregulation rarely mean smarter government. They mean smaller programs, fewer safeguards, and vulnerable communities losing vital resources. By stripping away federal oversight and funneling less money to states with broad discretion, these changes risk erasing targeted support Congress designed to help struggling schools and students. This isn't just bookkeeping. It's a fundamental shift that undercuts educational equity under the guise of cutting red tape. The real cost of these cuts is measured in classrooms, not spreadsheets. When $4.3 billion in targeted federal education programs is slashed to $2 billion and repackaged as a block grant, students in high-need communities are the first to feel it. These programs fund teacher training, after-school programs, reading and math interventions, and special education services. Without them, schools face larger class sizes, fewer resources, and reduced support for vulnerable students. Block grants shift decision-making to states, but without federal safeguards, funds may never reach the schools that need them most. Rural and low-income districts already stretched thin risk losing essential lifelines. For families, this means fewer learning opportunities, diminished student outcomes, and widening achievement gaps. Behind the language of efficiency lies a stark reality. Millions of children stand to lose critical support that shapes their futures. What's unfolding isn't just a fight over education, it's a test of democracy itself. The Department of Education exists because Congress created it, and only Congress has the authority to dismantle it. When the executive branch unilaterally moves to slash programs, consolidate funding, and lay the groundwork for the department's closure without explicit legislative approval, it undermines the constitutional balance of powers. If presidents can bypass Congress to eliminate agencies they dislike, no federal program is safe. Education today could be healthcare, environmental protections, or civil rights enforcement tomorrow. This creeping shift concentrates power in the executive branch, eroding the checks designed to prevent unilateral rule. Representative Hoyer's questioning highlighted a crucial truth: following the law isn't optional. Protecting democratic processes is as vital as protecting education, because without one, the other can't survive. If this alarms you, now is the time to act. Contact your representatives and demand they protect public education funding and uphold the rule of law. Share this story to raise awareness about the stakes for students, teachers, and our democracy. Speak out on social media, at school board meetings, and in community forums. Congress needs to hear that dismantling the Department of Education without due process is unacceptable. Democracy depends on citizens paying attention and demanding accountability before it's too late.